Good morning. I'm the Reverend Molly Housh Gordon, the minister of this congregation. I am a pale woman with long red hair wearing a floral blouse and maroon blazer. And I have a few very brief announcements for you this morning before our opening words. The first is to invite you to stay after the service for a panel at noon, moderated by the Reverend Dr. C.W. Dawson and presented by our social action team, entitled The Henry Kirkland Black Farmer Scholarship Fund Remembrance and Repair, which will focus on a scholarship for African American farmers established and administered by the Columbia Center for Urban Agriculture and partners in pursuit of greater justice in agriculture in mid-Missouri. The second is to let you know that our annual meeting is coming up on May 15th when we practice the democratic governance of our congregation. We will be electing new board members. We will be voting to adopt our church's budget. And this year, we will also be having a very special vote about adopting the 8th principle of Unitarian Universalism to center anti-racism and anti-oppression work more fully at the very heart of our faith and mission. So all voting members, yes, woo! Please plan to show up on May 15th to stay after the service to vote at our annual meeting. And I also wanted to let you know that we have 2 identical budget meetings coming up for those who would like to delve more deeply into our budget before we vote to adopt it on that day. One will be this afternoon at 3 p.m. The other will be this coming Thursday at 7 p.m. They're both on Zoom, and you can find the link at our website, uucomo.org. Last announcement. Joyful news in the life of our congregation. We have been asked and said yes to serving once more as a teaching congregation, which means that we will be having an intern minister starting this coming fall. Yes. St. Louis seminarian and longtime Unitarian Universalist George Grimm Howell approached us this winter looking for an internship site nearby his home in St. Louis. And after several in-depth conversations, we realized that he would be an excellent fit for our congregation and we would be an excellent fit for his learning needs. We are overjoyed to welcome him as our intern minister beginning in August. And George sent us a video greeting to share with you this morning. So let's hear a few words of introduction from our new intern minister himself. He is pictured in the video, a white man with a bald head, graying goatee, and hip rectangular glasses, with the sanctuary of the First Unitarian Church of St. Louis in the background. Here is George.
Columbia, Missouri. I'm George Grimm Howell, he, him, his, and I'm excited and grateful for the opportunity to become your intern minister starting this August. Thank you for the confidence you've placed in me, and thanks in advance for being willing to teach me a thing or two about what ministry means for you at UUCC. I truly look forward to meeting each one of you face to face, heart to heart, soul to soul, and I look forward to doing the joyful work of building and sustaining beloved community here in Missouri. Until we can meet in person, here is a little about me. While I'm still a stranger for now to UUCC, I'm no stranger to Unitarian Universalism. I began my journey into the liberal religious faith back in 1993, when my spouse Betsy and I were married in the Unitarian Universalist Church. Upon our move to St. Louis in 1994, we joined her family's church, First Unitarian Church of St. Louis, and we've been active members ever since. Because of my experience with lay-led worship in St. Louis, the worship arts will always be my first love. As you might have guessed from the gray in my beard, my call to ministry came later in life. My day job for the past 25 plus years has been as a communication consultant, but my night job since 2017 has been attending seminary, largely via Zoom, at United Theological Seminary of the Twin Cities. I'm delighted to share with you that I will graduate next month with a Master of Divinity degree, or MDiv. I was drawn to United because of its history of queer inclusion and because of the opportunity to earn an MDiv with an emphasis in theology and the arts. My love of the arts began with music and has extended to poetry and a bit of amateur filmmaking. I also have a growing appreciation of the visual arts and the rich world of storytelling that this medium can unlock. What I'm focused on this spring is my chaplaincy training, which is really a critical part of training for future ministry. For me, chaplaincy means one-on-one and group spiritual care at 2 sites in the city of St. Louis that focus on serving unhoused or housing insecure populations. And this work is teaching me about the connection between spiritual care and worship, and also about the connection between liberation theology and artistic self-expression. I look forward to sharing and growing together in all these areas and so much more as we start our journey together. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to Reverend Housh Gordon and to each of you for your vision to become once again a teaching congregation. I know I have much to learn from each of you as we learn and grow together in our ministry to each other, to the Columbia community, and to the wider world. I stand ready to join my hands, my heart, and my love with yours. See you in August.
I'm so grateful to the Board of Trustees for their vision and unanimously supporting becoming a teaching congregation again. I cannot wait to work with George, and I know that he's going to be a wonderful addition for all of us. Thank you. And now our opening words. Happy May Day! Yay! Blessed Beltane and fierce International Workers' Day to you all. Our opening words this morning are from early 20th century feminist labor leader Rose Schneiderman, who said, "What the woman who labors wants is the right to live, not simply exist. The right to life as the rich woman has the right to life, the sun and music and art. You have nothing that the humblest worker has not the right to have too. The worker must have bread, but she must also have roses." So let us stop this morning, the beginning of May, in the blossoming of spring, and on this International Workers' Day, to just stop and enjoy the roses. And we will go forth when we are finished to ensure that all may do the same. Our opening hymn is number 109, As We Come Marching, Marching, which is the anthem of that early 19th century women's labor movement. Bread and roses, bread and roses. And so I invite you to stand or remain seated as you're most comfortable. Make sure that your mask is firmly covering nose and mouth, and join our voices and hearts together in song.
Hello, I'm Gretchen Mowney, one of our worship associates. I am a white woman in her late 30s with pale skin and brown hair. I'm wearing a long floral skirt in black and white and red and a black blouse and holding a long white cane. We now light our chalice, the symbol of our faith, in the community that holds us and the bright flame of the human spirit that unites us. Will you please join me in our weekly words of affirmation, printed in our order of service? Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Good morning. Good morning. I'm Jamila Batchelder, our Director of Religious Education, a woman with pale skin, dark blonde hair, a black jacket, and a red and turquoise striped blouse, and less hip glasses. I am very fortunate that I love my work. But part of loving my work is also having the opportunity to rest from my work. So after a very busy few weeks, I spent some time this week resting and contemplating the labor movement, as one does. And I just felt tremendous gratitude for the work the labor movement has done for workers, for their right to be treated with dignity and respect, and to have their well-being honored and valued. And a big part of that is rest. We cannot work without also resting. We rest ourselves and renew ourselves in body and in spirit, both individually and collectively. I think that's why we need 2 days in the weekend. I want to take the opportunity today to rest and renew ourselves in community. I know many of us are about to head into the most frenzied time of year. How many people here today are teachers? Do we have any teachers here? And professors? How many of you are administrators or students? Or the parents of students who will see them through this busy time? How about religious professionals? Any other job that I don't know about that is super busy in May? As we get ready for this big final push, let us take a moment to rest. Breathe in so deeply, letting it completely fill your chest. Feel it swell, and then release. Feel how good it feels to just breathe. To honor this moment of not needing to be anywhere but right here. Not doing anything but breathing. Take a moment to let go of everything else. Just let yourself rest. Rest your body. Rest your spirit. Remind yourself that we deserve this time. That respecting the inherent worth and dignity of ourselves and each other includes resting. Not as some extra. That would be nice in theory, idea, but central to our most human needs. Breathe again. Feels so good. Let it fully cleanse you. Feel your very humanness. You are not a work machine, but a living, breathing human. And you deserve to rest. Let us hold sacred this moment of rest together.
And as we have released the burdens of productivity culture, let us also lift the burdens of our hearts as we enter our weekly ritual of stones and waters. For those of you tuning in at home, I'd like to invite you into a moment of quiet contemplation as we hear some contemplative music to imagine the burdens of your hearts lifted and held by our community. For those of you with us in the room, you are welcome to engage in our weekly ritual as you feel moved. When we come forward to take a stone, infuse it with any of the hopes and fears and prayers that we bring with us this morning, and then drop the stone into the waters representing the love and embrace of our community. Those of you who wish to have your joy or sorrow spoken aloud may type it in the chat if you're online, or write it on a yellow slip at the table on the west side of the sanctuary. Put it in the basket there. I now invite you into this time of contemplation and of holding one another tenderly. We'd now like to invite our children to their Sunday school classes. You can meet your teachers in the back of the sanctuary to go down to our classrooms. And the rest of us are welcome to join in singing them out to their classes. The words are printed in your order of service.
Live in joy, go in peace, hold all our love as we bind. Live in joy, go in peace, hold all our love in your arms.
It always changes the energy in the room so much to see our children and their teachers depart. So let us take a moment to recenter ourselves in the spirit of love that unites and sustains and transcends us as we prepare to share the prayers and joys and sorrows of our community. For those of you who wish to share an embodied response to our joys and sorrows, the response to joys is spirit fingers and hands on our hearts for concerns or sorrows or prayers. For those of you with us online, I have the chat pulled up right here in the pulpit, and I would be happy to read aloud your joys and sorrows if you share them there with everyone. So make sure you select everyone instead of host and panelists. Let us join our hearts now. With joy, with Sarah Shipley-Hiles for the coming of age class, preparing their statements of belief this morning, and a little sorrow that they are growing up. Let us join our hearts with Heidi Shearer, who shares a joy and prayer that after 17 years of 24/7 on-call work at MU Housing, Heidi has started a new position at MU's Office of Institutional Equity. Great news for the university and for you. We join our hearts with Jessica online, holding space for daughter Savannah, who struggles to know her own worth and true beauty. May she know it so deeply. We join our hearts with Melissa online in joy to be able to renew a lease. We join our hearts in holding Charlie in prayer as she shares the sorrow of struggling with mental health and issues with parents. Christine shares joy that after many delays, COVID, a baby, cancer, her son and daughter-in-law are finally going on their honeymoon. I'd like to share prayers continuing for Rosetta Miller, who is recovering well from her heart attack, who has been released from the hospital and will be at the Bluffs for a couple of weeks to regain her strength. We send our love to her there. We join our hearts with Phil Sean in a prayer for her cousin Leanne, who was just diagnosed with breast cancer. Healing wishes to Leanne. And we join our hearts with Violet in joy at her great excitement to be hosting her first student recital in over 2 years today. It will be here in the sanctuary at 3:30, and all are welcome to come if you'd like to hear some wonderful youth music. These and the many, many other joys and sorrows and prayers of our community we hold deeply in heart as we conclude our time of prayer with a sung prayer from our hymnal, number 86, Blessed Spirit of My Life. I invite you to rise or remain seated as you are most comfortable to join in singing.
Blessed Spirit of my life, give me strength to stress and strive. Spirit of great mystery, hear the still small voice in me. Every lip my word must read, as I come who knows in me. Hear the connection, hear the source of accusation.
The following poem is titled The Low Road by Marge Piercy. What can they do to you? Whatever they want. They can set you up. They can bust you. They can break your fingers. They can burn your brain with electricity, blur you with drugs till you can't walk, can't remember. They can take your child, wall up your lover. They can do anything that you can't stop them from doing. How can you stop them? Alone. You can fight, you can refuse, you can take what revenge you can, but they're all over you. But two people fighting back to back can cut through a mob. A snake dancing file can break a cordon. An army can meet an army. Two people can keep each other sane, can give support, conviction, love, massage, hope, sex. Three people are a delegation, a committee, a wedge. With four, you can play bridge and start an organization. With six, you can rent a whole house, eat pie for dinner with no seconds, and hold a fundraising party. A dozen make a demonstration. 100 fill a hall. 1,000 have solidarity and your own newsletter. 10,000 power and your own paper. 100,000 your own media. 10 million your own country. It goes on one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again and they said no. It starts when you say, we, and know who you mean. And each day, you mean one more.
We are very pleased this morning to have a reflection from one of our members who is a part of an organizing effort in Colombia where they are saying we and knowing who they mean and growing in power. And so we are grateful to Crystal Buffaloe this morning for sharing about some things she's learned with the Daniel Boone Regional Library Workers Union movement.
Hello. I'm Crystal Buffaloe, a pale woman with curly brown hair and a light blue floral print dress. When Reverend Molly asked if I might be willing to speak for this May Day service, I was nervous, and my gut instinct was no, I didn't want to get up and do it. But once again, I think it's important that I live my values, and it is worthwhile to do things that are difficult and out of my comfort zone and even scary. So I said yes. As many of you know, and I have been so thankful for and humbled by your support, I'm a part of the current labor organizing movement at the public library here in Columbia. DBRL Workers United, or DBRL WOO. You're supposed to say WOO. In some ways, forming a union made perfect sense. There had been a whole slew of changes that for me, despite increasing my skills and responsibilities and working the same schedule as when I started in 2018, I made less in total wages in 2021. I think the past 2 years of the pandemic have led a lot of us to rethink a lot of things about our lives, including work and what it is that we owe to one another. But in other ways, it felt a little bit ridiculous to agitate for a union in face of management opposition. In light of the brutal history of the labor movement in this country and the deeply, deeply unjust conditions many other workers still face today, things are not so bad at the library. I enjoy many things about working there, which I've done part-time in public services for the past 3.5 years. And I enjoy many things about using the library services, which I've done for the past 14 years, ever since we moved to Columbia. Along with the trail system, the library building is one of my very favorite things about living here. It was a hub of community for me long before this church was. It's a sacred space for me, similar to this church building. In a lot of ways, books come close to what I have for a religion. They were a salvation for me as a child who grew up poor and loved to read. The library represents the very best of us. It's free and open to all. It's one of the ways society actually works for the common good. And as the movie The Public declares, it is one of the last bastions of democracy in America. So it's uncomfortable to talk about the ways in which my beloved library is failing its workers, and by extension, its community. And it's uncomfortable and almost shameful to talk about money at all, and how very little of it the vast majority of us library workers make. I guess in an ideal world, we just live on books and air and never have to talk about the minimum wage at all. But better than it could be isn't good. I can be acutely aware of how much worse it is in some other workplaces, and still at the same time, find it important and worthwhile to fight for change and improvement at a place that already does have so many wonderful things going for it. Because I don't want to live in a world where this is as good as it gets. I can work to make this small piece of the world better. I can and I should. I can hold in my hands at the same time that the library is wonderful and that it can and should do better by its workers, who are part and parcel of the community that we serve. My task here was to talk about what spiritual or worldview lessons I've taken from my work unionizing. Service is a cornerstone of my spiritual worldview, and I feel duty-bound to do what I can for my friends and coworkers, even if their issues are not my issues. That's exactly what a union is. In a concrete way, I can throw my support to and stand in solidarity with the people I work with and I care about. The mere fact of my presence, my voice alongside theirs, strengthens their position and fights back against injustice. What I can do with my privilege is to use it. And that's really how unionizing and organizing intersects with my faith and living my values. It's not enough to say, oh, those policies don't affect me. I'm not having any more kids, so I don't care about changes to parental leave, or I get health insurance through my spouse's work, or my position here is really pretty good. I'm not one of the people who are paid minimum wage. When instead I could really actually listen to those concerns and push back against a workplace culture that requires those with the least power to come forward individually and views the only good employees as the ones who toe the line. And if books come close to what I have for religion, then this is the other important part. What we have on this earth is each other, and what we can do on this earth is love and support one another. I have learned in this process very acutely that how I want things to be and my idealized vision of the library isn't actually always how they are. And that when I scratched the surface, it revealed some ugly things about systems of power behaving as they ever do to maintain the status quo. But change is possible. Other forms of leadership are possible. Less hierarchical and more democratic ways of decision-making are possible. People deserve a say in workplace conditions and changes to those that affect them. We vote on our union beginning May 18th, and we will kick off the period of electronic voting with a party right here in this sanctuary. I am very hopeful about the outcome, but I am proud of our work together and my small part in it regardless. And after election, then the real work begins, and that opportunity for new frameworks presents itself, where we will survey our members and determine our priorities and negotiate a contract that better serves and protects us all. Thank you so much for this opportunity to reflect upon my beliefs.
Woo. At the end of March, I attended one of the first large community meetings I had been to in over 2 years. The Daniel Boone Regional Library Workers United Solidarity meeting was being hosted here at the church, and I walked into a buzz of energy that had me grinning and verklempt. People were filling our space with their hope and presence and warmth. I missed that feeling so much. As I sat waiting for the event to begin, I gazed at the crowd and at the worker organizers arrayed across our chancel, 8 leaders of varying ages and identities, some perhaps more used to shelving books than public speaking, but all clearly ready to lead. And I found myself pondering the courage and love that find humans reaching out of our comfort zones to do something important for ourselves and our community, as Crystal so gorgeously shared earlier. And I found myself admiring how obviously the leadership among these library staff was shared in a gorgeous collective. And as the evening unfolded and various people rose to the pulpit or sat in a wheelchair and told their stories, I was very certain that I was on holy ground that had nothing to do with it being our sanctuary space. It's difficult to describe the sensation of that meeting other than to say I was overwhelmed by a feeling of deep care. The stories shared, of course, had their share of pain and struggle in the face of difficult conditions, policies, and wage and benefit issues. But what I kept hearing again and again at the heart of every testimony was love. Love in the struggle, love because of the struggle, love for one another and for our community. Woo wants our library to be a better place for our community and for their own lives, and perhaps most profoundly for each other, their fellow library staff. And the crowd gathered that evening wanted the same, and so we were all just sitting there in the spirit of care and a shared dream of thriving. And it became clear to me in that moment, again, as it does over and over in this life, how powerful is the collective. how much more our imaginations are together, how much powerful we are together in exercising and embodying our dreams. The spirit of we in the room was palpable that night. And I felt myself soaking it up like a flower in dry, cracked dirt. When the time came to slip out and go put my kids to bed, I did not want to leave or miss a single moment of the community that was blossoming in the room. And this is the possibility of collective organizing. This is the dream at the heart of a union. The love that lifts us up in dignity, the love that refuses to leave our colleagues behind. It is a shared love of community that can satisfy our thirst across landscapes of manufactured scarcity and control. It is the power of we to shape our lives towards something more beautiful for each and all. I don't want to be too romantic. Labor organizing is, of course, a human endeavor and therefore complicated by human hypocrisies. Over many decades of history, unions have bridged divides and occasionally created them. They have sometimes overcome corporate strategies to cynically deepen racial animosity, and they have sometimes fallen prey to those strategies in very harmful ways. Unions have been just as gritty and hard as they have been caring and idealistic. They have seen power shared widely among members and occasionally hoarded by a few. So it goes with human endeavors. But at their best, collective organizing efforts awaken and embolden in us the power of a larger we than we otherwise dare to dream. It is that best that I experienced at the Daniel Boone Regional Library Workers United Solidarity meeting. And it is that best that I invite us to stay our hearts upon this International Workers' Day. Across the last 2 years, Americans' experience of and attitude towards our working lives have seen radical shifts brought about by a global pandemic that unveiled and deepened many of the long-felt dynamics of late-stage capitalism. It's all over the news with different framing language. They are calling it the Great Resignation, the worker shortage, the resurgence of unionizing efforts, all of the ways we are witnessing the people's collective unwillingness to give our lives any longer to an economy that cares nothing for us. All of it is rooted in what I hope will be remembered by history as a profound reorientation of values in the face of our great global existential crisis over the last 2 years. At the very universal scale, it became so clear, didn't it, what really matters in this life? It always does come clear when life bumps up against mortality and limits. I know my own occasional workaholism was brought for a while to a roaring stop. Oh, wait. My days here are short, and my loved ones are precious, and our time together is worth everything. We also saw across these pandemic years, perhaps more clearly than some of us ever had, a long time truth that our current economy is built upon the plunder of inherent human worth, that it will take everything it can from us and give us a pittance in return. We saw this in the pandemic in our own lives, through the experiences of other frontline workers and the policy decisions unfolding all around us. We saw how little the systems upholding our economy care for us, how willing they are to sacrifice us, some more than others, for the sake of the market or the bottom line. We saw how those at the margins and most vulnerable and therefore most needing of our care were sacrificed first. What evil! We saw how it is all built upon using us up, no matter the consequence, like we are still more fossil fuel. But across these 2 years, we saw something else too. we saw something else too. We saw how well we can care for each other. We saw it in unprecedented mutual aid efforts across the country and world, in uprisings for the sanctity of Black life, in every space where we showed up or stayed apart to protect one another. We caught a glimpse of how things could be different if it were all built upon care. We saw how we could work to make things different by investing in the collective, by caring for one another in very material and embodied ways. Now, I know some people learned a different lesson from this time and from cynical politicians and media outlets. Some people did double down on going it alone, refusing masks, ignoring our interdependence. But I want to remind you that those of us who learned something profound about loving one another well, we are many. We are many. And we realized how much we care for each other. And we saw anew how to care for each other well. And I think, I suspect, I hope it has changed us. In fact, I suspect the glimpse of the power of collective care is one thing at the core of this current moment in our history, this wave of labor organizing and informal workers' rights advocacy taking our country by storm. This moment in history that perhaps we can cease to call the Great Resignation and begin to call the Great Organization. But this is not a time of people refusing to work. This is a time, if we can double down on what we have learned about care, this is a time of investing in the collective and creating structures that will love us back because they are us and we care for us. This great organization is unfolding across the country at Starbucks locations, in Amazon warehouses from Alabama to New York, here in Columbia at our beloved library, and so many other less formal places too. Did you know hospitality industry workers here in Columbia are rallying to help each other access mental health care after the trauma of their last 2 years? And that part of why that Amazon union in New York came to be by vote is because its leaders held cookouts and asked their colleagues what care they needed and then gave it to them. Rides to the doctor and new shoes for kids. And yes, also organizing for protections from backbreaking work conditions. The great organization is unfolding, and it shows every possibility of helping us create a bigger we. A new shared power and new structures that turn us back toward one another. And I hope this can be good news for us all. A new shared power and new structures that turn us back toward one another can be good news for us all. As we turn away from systems of domination and plunder to create structures of collective care in the rubble of those crumbling systems. Unitarian Universalists believe that all of life is deeply interdependent, tangled together in ways that are both profoundly beautiful and terribly threatening. Surely a global pandemic has reminded us that our closeness to one another is both blessing and risk. And America's experience of COVID-19 has shown us what deathliness unfolds when we try to escape our interconnection. The forces of our economy and systems have shown us over centuries the deathliness that spreads when just a few seek to control the entangled many. And across generations, there have also always been those who show us what is possible when we deepen into a great and humble respect for our entanglement, when we seek to make our connections visible and weave ourselves together justly. This is the faithful good news of the great organization, that we can weave ourselves more tightly together in mutual care, that we can make our interdependence material by relying on one another, showing up for and with one another, making decisions together, building trust and caring for one another, that we can do that every place we work and every place we join together in community. and that we can find a call at the heart of our faith to join with those who resist harm, who center dignity and demand better for and with themselves and one another. As Crystal mentioned in her reflection, on May 18th, the workers of the Daniel Boone Regional Library will begin the process of voting on their union together. But they have already shown our community what it is to dream and nurture structures of collective care, structures that support the power of we. I hope that we will keep showing up for and with them, and for and with each other, and with all who center dignity and reach toward one another in connection. As Marge Piercy reminded us, it goes on one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again and they said no. It starts when you say we and know who you mean, and each day you mean one more. Power to the we, y'all. Happy International Workers' Day. And let us sing together hymn number 368, To the Power Within and Among Us. Now let us sing. I believe choir members are going to come lead us so that you can follow the low part or the high part as you feel moved. If you'd like to sing the low part, you're going to follow them. And if you'd like to sing the high part, you'll follow them. Sing to the power of the faith within. Sing to the power of the faith within. Lift up your voice. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Sing to the power of the faith within. Now let us sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing to the power of the hope within. Lift up your voice. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the hope within. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Lift up your voice. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the love within. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within. Lift up your voice. Lift up your voice. Be not afraid. Be not afraid. Now let us sing to the power of the joy within. Our closing words are from the Reverend Wayne Arneson. Take courage, friends. The way is often hard, the stakes are very high, the path is never clear. Take courage. For deep down there is another truth. You are not alone. Go in blessing together to live the power of we, and let us be a blessing to a world that needs our care. Let us share our benediction. You are welcome to join hands if you would like, or to keep your hands away from others if you prefer, as we sing our benediction.